Yo, boys, welcome back to Star Spangled Gamblers. You heard the intro. We are doing weekend political drinking games for all of the trauma we've experienced this week. And of course, all the excitement that we feel betting on or against the insanity that is American politics. Pratik, I'm going to try and forecast this a little bit, but I've gotten my notes. Hopefully everything we're going to do. So we've got to recap this week's primaries all over the country, kind of California heavy though. We have to recap the January 6th committee MAGA riots first big hearing. And I think we also have a little conversation about Joe Biden's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel and maybe what his pharmacist needs to do to rebalance those meds. Plenty to bet on off of that. And then we also need to preview the Alaska primary this weekend, Sarah Palin versus Santa Claus and what's his face Baggage. Some next steps in California's electoral calendar, which never really makes sense until you get into it. And then I think we've got some smaller local elections that we're making didnt plays on. Does that sound right? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Okay. So first up in this format, weekend drinking games, political drinking games, we've got to do Would You Rather. We've got to do Two Truths and a Lie. And my personal favorite, it probably makes you squirm because you're a little bit of a prude. How do you feel when we play Kill, Fuck, Marry with politics?
Well, it's funny. Someone in our group was saying that apparently in the UK, you're not supposed to say that word. I mean, not that you're supposed to say it here either. But
well, yeah, but we do. But you're deflecting from the question. I mean, does it make you blush?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Me too. But we got to push it. Okay, but first we got to do Would You Rather. And I sort of want to start in the land of woke DAs and the fighter pilot party, which is one of our favorite memes. Maybe we can just get to lift off here.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Would you rather? Okay. Would you rather? Two good options, two bad options. We'll just debate what the lesser of two evils for our betting strategy is. So, okay. So this week in California primary elections news, San Francisco woke DA Chesa Boudin. I don't even know if that's how you say his name, but I like eating boudin when I'm in Cajun country. In San Francisco, woke DA Chesa Boudin was booted by a 20-point margin because basically he just made crime legal in San Francisco since being elected in 2019. So people got sick and tired of crime being legal, booted their woke DA. That is this week in progressive politics. This week in conservative politics in California, the fighter pilot party, which I think Star Spangled Gamblers hardos know is an offshoot of the Republican Party. Usually the fighter pilot party is kind of a bogey coming in to take down an incumbent, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. This week, the fighter pilot party absolutely destroyed, just shot down over enemy territory. Greg Raths in Orange County, California, big loser to Young Kim, and Michael Guest, who I believe is an incumbent in Mississippi, kind of a little bit of a never Trumper, easily handled his fighter pilot party challenger from the right. So I will just ask, Pratik, would you rather, after this week's primary, would you rather declare the fighter pilot party dead, or would you rather declare woke DAs in America dead as you bet on the next round of elections?
Well, I would say actually, depending on your narrative, I mean, you could actually regard the fighter pilot party as pulling off a big win in the sense that the big question was in the Mississippi House race was whether or not the incumbent, Michael Guest, would be able to basically close it out. He didn't. Michael Cassidy, the fighter pilot, pulled off sort of something of an upset in the sense that he's now dragging the race into a sort of runoff. So, you know, I think that's not a bad outcome, all things considered. We'll have to see what ends up happening. Chesa Boudin, on the other hand, I mean, it's just a total disaster. I mean, there's not even an iota of good news there for progressive DAs or people in that mold of thinking in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the maybe the metaphor is that the what's his name, Cassidy from the fighter pilot party has sort of penetrated Michael Guest's airspace, but I'm not really optimistic he's going to win that runoff. Whereas I am and have been, if you've been following Star Spangled Gamblers, really looking for opportunities to bet against kind of left coast crazies like Chesa Boudin. I think that that's going to be a sustainable betting strategy going forward. I understand that there was a woke DA who won a race somewhere, maybe in New Mexico, I thought I saw. But I think the more opportunities you can take to just, bet on progressive infighting, that is going to be a profitable strategy going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And in that vein, one market on predictive that was very, very low volume, but I think is quite interesting is the San Jose mayor election. And I don't know if you're following this. First of all, what I didn't know is San Jose is apparently the 10th largest city in America, which, like, I don't know, I guess it isn't that surprising, but it also wasn't like totally intuitive to me. But anyway, I mean, basically you have a mayor's race here where you have the front runner sort of establishment candidate, Cindy Chavez, who's backed by labor and other things. And the markets have been very severely discounting until really the last 24 hours or so. The challenger, Matt Mahan, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Now, I am very interested in buying lottos on him for two reasons. One, I think people are not aware of how serious of a background he has. So he was the president of the Harvard. He was president of the Harvard student body. He's raising boatloads of money. But the second part of it, which I think people are not paying attention, is that if you look at the nature of his challenge, he is, although he's obviously a Democrat running on the left and all that, he's emphasizing two issues, one of which is being tough on crime and homelessness and so forth. And as we've seen across a lot of these elections, LA also, which we'll talk about, this is proving to be kind of a winning issue and a way in for anti-establishment sort of Democrats. So the markets are kind of working themselves out on a price, but I'm definitely going to be looking at lottos on him and any other candidates I can find who are running on kind of a tough on crime message.
I think, look, I don't have any new news to announce on this podcast, but I'm just loving the strategy of betting against Democratic kind of machine and machine adjacent candidates, because it's just the writing's on the wall. We were on here a couple months ago talking about what's his face Caruso in LA and what a great bet that was. You're welcome if you followed us. I have been talking about holding shares for Alex Lazary in Wisconsin. His dad's a billionaire. He has unlimited money. He's running against, once again, like an insider, not really perfect candidate in Mandela Barnes. Anytime where you can find pro-business and big money against someone who, has a nefarious past or is associated with woke excess, I think that is a good bet or at least worth evaluating. So I guess I will not tap dance on the fighter pilot party's grave, and we'll just endorse betting against woke DAs or kind of dirtied up Democrats in this cycle.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing worth mentioning too is that I think the markets are actually considerably out of touch on this theme. And you saw that in the LA mayor race, not only in the sense that they got the outcome wrong, but the margin market in that one proved to be totally off. If you're in our kind of SSG insider group, I had flagged that trade, but there were some very, very low prices available on not only betting on Caruso, but especially in the margin markets, the idea that he might win by a comfortable margin. I picked up a bunch of shares well under 5%, all of which shot up. It may actually be one of my better trades of the year. But the point is here that I think at least a sizable contingent of people betting on predicted just are not in tune with this, with the reality facing establishment Democrats.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let's move on. So where do we need to go next? Okay, actually, we're going to talk about Caruso, and we're going to talk about kind of MAGA versus anti-MAGA Republicans. So this week in the news, back to this week in the news. So 5 of 35 Republicans who voted for the January 6th MAGA riot commission, 5 out of 35 of them were on the ballot this week. All of them are going to at least survive until runoff. And it looks like the one who's in the worst trouble, though, is David Valdeo out in California. He looks like he is probably a goner. That anti-Trump endorsement, no bueno. Meanwhile, in LA, rich guy Rick Caruso is in post position to be the next mayor. And this is after receiving endorsements from Snoop Dogg and Elon Musk. So it's also worth noting that Caruso has been a Republican for basically his entire life until this election, when he conveniently saw the light and became a lib. So what we really have here is the power of the Trump endorsement versus the power of the Snoop Dogg and Elon Musk endorsement. So after seeing what we've seen, what do you think? Like, if you're running for office, would you rather be endorsed by Snoop Dogg and Elon Musk, or would you rather be endorsed by Donald Trump?
Well, so let me ask you before I weigh in there, do you have a view on why the markets continue to regard Karen Bass as a heavy favorite in the LA mayor race? I mean, right now, she is a 63% favorite on Predicted.
Lack of imagination, maybe? Does that sound right?
I would have expected that one to move after the primary results, but unless I'm totally missing something, I mean, again, I think the markets are just off here. Okay, anyway, sorry, but I ignored your question. So can you repeat the...
Oh, I mean, I guess I'm just asking, like, where's the power here in these elections? Like, is the power the Trump endorsement that I guess it sort of had middling results for, his vengeance campaign against the people who voted for the MAGA Riot Commission? Or is the power in the Elon Musk and, celebrity endorsement for the Republican running as a Democrat?
I mean, I think that probably you still, all things considered, want a Trump endorsement. I think that the track record remains clear that it's unquestionably, in my view, the most powerful endorsement you can have in American politics today. But I think what we've seen over and over again is that it's certainly not the only thing that matters. And if you're a lousy candidate with no message or no message except the big lie, a Trump endorsement in isolation is not going to be enough to get you over the inertia of state parties, establishments, poor quality candidates, et cetera.
I mean, I wish I could come on this podcast and say that I had like a repeatable formula for when the Trump endorsement matters and when it doesn't. But I'm so baffled. I mean, look in South Carolina. We talked about Nancy Mace's primary, the establishment Republican being primaried to the right by Katie Arrington, the MAGA candidate. I actually think Katie Arrington is a much stronger candidate than some of these MAGA Republicans who, did win. And it looks to me like she's going to lose by a lot. So I don't understand at all what's going on with this stuff at all. Maybe you do. I don't.
I mean, I agree that there's no like scientific formula here or something, but I would say that one thing that I'm looking out for is in these races, do state parties have a very strong preference for a candidate? And I think, we can kind of do a deeper analysis, but I think that is one area where the Trump endorsement is running into trouble. Whereas I think on the other hand, we're seeing the power of a Trump endorsement is either when the state party also really has it out for an incumbent, or when the field is totally fractured and like no one really has a strong preference, and you just kind of have to get over like a 30% hump or something. Right. And there, I think there's certainly an argument that a Trump endorsement matters. I mean, I think it's inconceivable, for example, like in Pennsylvania, that Dr. Oz would have won but for a Trump endorsement.
Right. And then you look in like Nebraska, where the incumbent, the current governor, intervened pretty heavily. You look in South Carolina, where Nikki Haley is like, really just put in reps to get Nancy Mace through this primary. So I think that holds water. All right. Do you want to talk about President Biden?
Yeah.
I guess we should talk about Biden and inflation together, because they're sort of the same to most people right now. So Joe Biden, president of the United States, made an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel's show this week. If you didn't see it, I will just summarize and say it wasn't his best performance. Probably wasn't his worst performance either. There was like a whole cringy, it's still 2021 mask thing where he like came out in an N95 and took it off. And then they panned to Jill Biden, who was in an N95 the entire time. Like, hello, bro. Anyway, so cringy mask stunt, plenty of stuttering, enough kind of facts butchered that'll keep right-wing media, they'll be busy with their memes for at least a week. And also at the same time, today is Friday. You may be hearing this on Saturday. Almost 9% inflation, record high gas prices, just like continues to be very unfavorable for Joe Biden out there. So let me ask, would you rather bet that Joe Biden can kind of like figure out his meds or his routine or whatever so that he can sort of speak more clearly and not look like a bumbling old man? Or would you rather bet that Joe Biden can kind of like figure out this inflation thing and cool off the economy a little before November?
Well, before we talk about Biden, I just want to point out, miraculously enough for Biden, as cringe as his whole mask business was, he actually, in my view, gets second place for mask cringiness. Number one being Jason Miller.
Who's that?
Did you, if you watched the January 6th hearing,
Yeah.
Jason Miller is that like the MAGA Trump advisor with the massive moon face, who's just a compulsive. The weirdest thing was you'll have to go and watch the video. I mean, his head is just massive as it is, and so he looks a little bit goofy. But for whatever reason, he was being interviewed on video, just totally alone, no one in the room.
Yeah.
And he had a massive N95 covering like the totality of his face, except for like the slit of the eyes underneath, which turned out to be a Twitter meme. So
he did actually look like one of like a video game bad guy, or like a riff on like Darth Vader before his whole outfit was fully assembled. There was definitely something like very weird and distracting about that. I remember what you're talking about precisely now.
Yeah.
But this is, hold on, let me reframe this. This is important though, because the president needs to sharpen up his message and he also needs to sharpen up the economy. So this is speaking of cringe, this is a cringy way of me asking you which one you think is more likely in time to save the day for Democrats.
I am not particularly optimistic about Biden. I mean, he's in a very bad position right now in the sense that his personal approval ratings are pretty high. Like, I think the American people like him personally. So, no matter how many times he goes on these interviews and gets softball questions and makes jokes or whatever, that is not really speaking to his political reality. His approval ratings are completely in the dumpster, and the reasons are very clear. I just saw a poll. I'm forgetting by who, but his approval ratings on inflation are like at 24 or 25% or something. And I mean, I think the fundamental issue is that, in my view, it's very clear what's hurting Biden and the Democratic Party. And it's equally clear to me that Biden has neither the will or the mandate to deal with it. And I would say those are
what is it? Like you're throwing the teaser down, like let's get that money shot.
I would say I would summarize it as being three issues. I think number one is inflation and sort of economic issues adjacent to that. I think number two is the fact that he has no command over the Hill. He has not figured out how to a way to govern with the current configuration on Capitol Hill. And then the third thing, which is a little bit more nebulous, but I would argue maybe the most important factor, is that the American people voted for Biden in 2020, but that was not a vote for progressive wokeism. And the reality is that you just have an establishment class in power in the Democratic Party that is continuing to push the line on hot button cultural issues. And
you're making this too complicated. I think, like, what were you doing in like 1998?
I guess we were in junior high at that time.
So you were like, sneaking cigarettes and like buying cargo shorts?
Probably. No, I was not smoking, but
were you a cargo short guy?
Probably.
Yeah, of course you were. Okay, well, so let me quote someone from that time period, and you can tell me if you agree. Actually, do you remember who said this? Okay, you put yourself in stupid places. Yes, you think it's true. Situations where it's easy to look down on you. I think you like to be the victim. I think you like to be in pain. I think you make yourself a victim almost every single day. Blah, 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 blah. You do what you do. You say what you say. You try to be everything to everyone. You know all the right people. You play all the right games. You always try to be everything to everyone. Do you remember that wise person who said that?
I don't. Who is that?
That was Everclear. I think this is Joe Biden's problem. I think he's trying to be everything to everyone. Like, he's trying to be Uncle Joe one day. He's trying to be all like woke, creepy grandpa the next day. And like, none of it sticks. None of it's I have no idea what Joe Biden wants for the country. I have no clue. He just I feel like he's just trying to be everything to everyone. And one day that's woke grandpa. And the next day that's good old blue collar Joe wanting you to get like a $50,000 Tesla truck. What the fuck does this guy want?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me what is it that Biden's really passionate about and clear and consistent on, I would say maybe, a subset of foreign policy issues or something, like reinvigorating the transatlantic alliance. I mean, none of which has anything to do with his political position in America. I agree. I mean, on domestic policy, I have no idea what he believes, and more importantly, I don't think he even knows what to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, okay, time for me to sound like Sean Hannity. I feel like this is a very cautionary tale about like what liberal institutions, like not like in a classical sense, like the people who staff them wish Elizabeth Warren was the president, liberal institutions, about what they want and how they think, because this whole thing that everything has to be like interminably like diverse and debated, and someone from every single constituency has to get their way about something in every policy rollout. I think this is what you get. I think you get this total fucking Jackson Pollock painting of a presidency that you can stare at for 2 years and still not know what the fuck is going on. That's what I think happens. So Uncle Joe, just pick one of your personalities if you're listening and just be that guy. Cause like this shit is not working. Okay. Well,
what really told me that Biden's in trouble, I don't know if you caught this, but there was a Washington Post report, and it interviewed on background a senior economist who is advising the Biden administration. And what he basically said is, based on his discussions in the White House on inflation, in this narrative, they have the Biden White House has actually even given up on coming up with an actual policy on inflation. All they're really talking about is how to message on it.
Yeah.
And I've always had a pretty simple rule in politics that once a political candidate blames their problems on messaging as opposed to their underlying policy, they're probably out of their depth. And that, I think, isn't true in spades right now with the Biden White House.
Yeah, but it's also true that when you look back in history for like very accomplished elected leaders, they tend to be people who like recant their party orthodoxy and like throw their lot in with a type of reform that would have been unthinkable sooner. Like, I think it was a lot of kind of labor, green, and socialist leaders in Europe that, revised their pension systems that were really holding them back in like the 90s. And I'm sure that, like a Southern Democrat, Lyndon Johnson, who becomes, the face of civil rights in America, you could see, it's just never impossible to see the big reversal. But I think maybe we're exceeding our mandate a little bit. Like I'm struggling to figure out how we can connect this to betting advice right now, other than you and I like talking about it.
Well, I think that's clear enough. I mean, I think both of us have been basically arguing that the markets are too bearish on Biden, that the odds that the markets are giving him on re-election and so forth are too low. I think I continue to believe that, but every day that this stuff continues, you have to wonder, just how bad things can get for Biden. I mean, every time that I think he's kind of reached a low point, it just gets worse and worse. But to respond to your point that you just made here, one argument I've been making, and no one has really kind of given a good response from what I can tell, is I think Biden could solve a significant amount of his political problem if he were simply to come out and denounce woke excess and cultural excess. It wouldn't cost him a thing. I mean, there's nothing policy-wise he would have to do, and it's pretty obvious that whatever young millennial women in the White House are telling him, like the country just doesn't want this, which is like, in my view, one of the few things keeping the Republican Party afloat. The fact that he doesn't have the political will or insight or maturity to do that, I think, is a pretty damning indictment.
Well, but he'd have to restaff half the White House. I mean, like how many people in that cabinet are just in that cabinet because they bring the woke excess?
Well, I mean, if anyone, the Democratic Party has a mandate to do that, isn't it Biden?
Well, why not wait until after the election?
Well, to me, I think that's why I haven't completely given up on Biden. I think why he might make something of a comeback after the midterms. I have to think that, especially when you're looking at the amount of churn and turnover in the White House, there's probably just a whole contingent of moderates in the White House that are just waiting for the drubbing in the midterms before they basically come to Biden and say, look, we've indulged the progressives enough. It's time to govern maturely.
So this is like a next cabinet out thing. And I do wonder, like the only person, what am I holding? I always just hold the ones that no one else wants. So I'm holding Gina Raimondo at like 4 cents and Tom Vilsack at like 4 cents. realistically, these are not the people who would be shown the door. Maybe Raimondo, because she's the Department of Commerce, and that's somehow tied to the economy's poor performance. But it might be the case that the smart bet is to hold Javier Becerra just because, one, no one likes him. Two, his name starts with a B, so it would resolve in the event of a tie ahead of most of the people on this list. And three, like, he would be the type of person who would, just happen to hand in his resignation when the White House pivots back to sanity in like 2023.
Yeah, that's interesting. I only have a strong view on one person in this market, which is that I don't think Anthony Blinken is leaving anytime soon.
No.
Like, I think he wants to just be there as long as he can.
Yeah.
But my gut here, I could be wrong, is I don't think Biden's going to have the will to fire any of these people, even if he probably should be. So I think it's kind of a bet on who basically is just so exasperated with being there, they just want to quit and do something else.
Yeah.
And I have to think at least one or two people are going to be in that position after the midterms. The one that I am eyeing is Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense.
Right.
I mean, he's been at senior levels of the government for years. He's old. I can't imagine he wants to be doing this much longer. So I'm trying to get buy orders filled on him. I suppose, the other guy who it doesn't really make sense for him to leave would be Merrick Garland. I think he probably wants to stick it out.
Well, he kind of has to.
Yeah, with the Trump investigation.
His job's about to suck, man. Like, it's about to suck because we're going to talk about this in a separate segment. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But like, the amount of pressure that's about to be on him to take Donald Trump to court, and like the size shit sandwich that would be for the Department of Justice and the Biden presidency is just insane. Like, I don't know how you do that fucking guy's job. He seems pretty even keeled though.
Yeah. I suppose, maybe that is the scenario in which he leaves, that basically there's just a fundamental clash coming down the pike on how to deal with the Trump issue. And maybe he ends up resigning, but I think he's probably the right guy to navigate that. I think he probably has the confidence of everyone involved. So I'm inclined to think he'll stick it out until that issue is resolved.
I totally understand why Obama nominated him to be a Supreme Court justice. Like, I'm sure Merrick Garland and I disagree about stuff, but like when he talks, he just seems very thoughtful and measured and like a good guy to have in the role for what's about to happen.
Yeah, well, maybe that is another way he exits, right? Maybe Biden gives him another shot the next time there's a Supreme Court opening.
Yeah. Well, who's not going anywhere? Pete Buttigieg isn't going anywhere. Deb Haaland we've said a lot of mean things about Deb Haaland on this. She's not going anywhere. I really think the whole country right now is basically just Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, and like Ron Klain in a room. And occasionally Nancy Pelosi comes in and like smacks them around and tells them to get their shit together. But like, I get the sense that they're the ones really calling the shots.
Yeah. We could talk about that at length, but I think that's the other point, right? Who actually is calling the shots in the Biden administration?
Ooh, tonight on Hannity. Okay. All right. We need to move on. Two truths and a lie. So we had that January 6th MAGA riot hearing. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this, but we need to spend some on it. We did a whole podcast about it a couple of days ago. So two truths and a lie. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah.
Two truths and a lie. Okay. January 6th committee's first hearing. One, it was extremely boring. Two, we already covered it. Three, voters really care about what happened on Thursday.
Well, judging by the video you released earlier, I think you have a stronger view on this than I do. So I think you should riff on this.
Well, we did already cover it. So listen to our podcast from earlier this week. It was mostly you talking, and I think it was very, very sage and sober reasoning about how this would unfold. So if you haven't heard that podcast, please listen to it. We're making jokes, but this is a serious issue. I would say that there's probably two lies. The lie in this to me is that voters care. Politicians are like always fighting the last war, right? And I feel like that's what we saw. Like, if you want to know where government fails and why it fails, like a really short access point would be to watch the January 6th committee hearings. Because it just seemed like all these government nerds sat around and they remembered the Watergate hearings and the Iran-Contra hearings, and they thought, wow, we need to like recreate that magic on primetime TV. But like no one in America is getting information on primetime TV. No one in America watches hearings or cares what happens in hearings. Like if you can't sell it on TikTok, if you can't make a t-shirt out of it, like it's just not going to stick. And so, while Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson and the witnesses might have had very compelling things to say, it was just such a boring, like non-user friendly, inaccessible format, especially after all the hype that they created, that I really think that he was maybe the worst case scenario for this committee and its ambition and the very true problem that they're trying to address.
Well, so one of the things we had talked about was whether or not the video footage would be compelling enough. Should I take from what you're saying that you think it just didn't cut it?
No, what you should take from what I'm saying is, why the fuck did they let Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson talk for an hour before they rolled that video?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was expecting right at, maybe 2-3 minutes in, they'd have compelling video right away. I thought that would be the play. And yeah, I mean, they had, I think a significant number of people probably tuned out right at Benny Thompson in the beginning. So I agree with you there. I think that was a blunder.
So I do think it was quite boring. We did already cover it. And I think that, style matters, packaging matters. And I don't think that voters are going to care. That's what I think. And that's not an endorsement of Trump, MAGA riot, whatever. But I do think it's something that government workers need to grapple with, is why do they not present information in formats that voters will care and absorb? Well, just watch this committee. It's a teachable moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just refer people back from to the last pod that we did. My analysis isn't substantially different. I'll just say by way of summary, I think this is just kind of one more cut in Trump, one more thing that's going to pop the Trump balloon. I don't think it's going to be a dramatic thing, maybe but for an indictment. But I think that even though it wasn't some bombshell kind of an event, I think this committee is going to have the effect of continuing to chip away at Trump's grip on the Republican Party.
Well, they got to do it fast.
I was the one thing I found very, I was just imagining Trump's reaction to seeing Ivanka on video saying that she believed Bill Barr about the election. And I also thought it was mildly funny how Liz Cheney basically threw Jared Kushner under the bus with kind of a cheap shot. But
that was amazing. They could not have made Jared Kushner look like a bigger prick than they did.
Well, especially because the Washington Post ran a whole piece on how he was supposedly throwing Trump under the bus in the days after. But all sideshows though. Yeah.
I mean, truly, it was like this needs to be a show, and they're turning it into a courtroom proceeding. Like, stop hiring lawyers, Congress. Start hiring cokeheads in Hollywood who know how to make things glitter. Okay, all right. We have to. Our users are furious at us right now because we're not betting enough. All right, well, let's kill, fuck, marry some bets. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I'm calling this kill, fuck, marry second tier elections for degens. Speaking of being bad entertainer, that's not a very splashy title, but these are 3 elections that very few people care about, but we do because we are degens just like you. So KFM, kill, fuck, marry. Let's do it. Okay, so first up, Alaska's congressional district primary, Sarah Palin versus Nick Begich, kind of 2 political dynasties. Santa Claus, the man thrown in there somewhere, very crowded field. Second, you already teed up, is the San Jose mayor's race. And third, we are now a week past the first round of voting in Colombia's presidential election. We had Ian Bizik from Seeking Alpha talking about that recently. 3 second-tier elections, all very degen friendly. Would you care to kill one of them?
Well, I'm going to have to say Colombia only because I know nothing about it. But yeah, I would definitely refer people back to the interview you did with Ian. I thought it was very good.
Well, political violence is a thing in Colombia. I don't know if you can make jokes about killing that election.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that one? I just do not know a thing about it.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's like, I mean, Ian said it artfully, and the polls more or less are kind of proving it out, that this Gustavo Petro, like Bernie Sanders / former communist death squad guy, he just seems to be maxed out at like 40 to 45% of support. And to me, an inevitability that the right-wing candidate will just, beat him marginally.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I don't have anything of substance to talk about here, but I will just point out, I mean, Hernandez not too long ago was trading well under 5%. So, I think it just kind of goes to show if you can figure out even a little bit what's going on in a foreign election or kind of a low knowledge, limited liquidity kind of thing, I mean, you can get a pretty serious return in these. Unfortunately, I did not. But
I mean, you do get the idea that in some of these foreign countries that literally all of the rich guys kind of get scared and they call a meeting and they just sort of pick some guy that is going to be their cipher. And, all of a sudden Rodolfo Hernandez goes from zero to the likely next president overnight.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why it's oftentimes safer just to bet against overpriced favorites, because you just never really know. Like, you can know when someone's a favorite that shouldn't be, but it's very hard to know, who should be in the post position.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe this is for another pod, but I think that kind of a strategy could pay very big in predicted next leader out markets.
Yeah. Okay, so you're killing that race. I'm actually going to fuck the Colombia president race. I think that is a great one to hit and quit. It's pretty straightforward. Probably isn't going to be one you want to stick with for the rest of your life, though. Very unpredictable down there. You, my friend, need to decide whether you're going to wedge yourself to the Alaska primary or the San Jose mayor's race.
I think I'm probably going to marry the actually, let me take that back. I think I'm going to marry Alaska. And I am basically...
Are you into polyamory?
In this case, maybe. I mean, I've been making the argument on this pod for some time that I think Sarah Palin is highly overpriced. Now, the markets are finally starting to correct. And as of right now, Palin is now down to 47%, Nick Begich down to 45%. I think that, the election is tomorrow. I think if Sarah Palin underperforms, I mean, that price could definitely dip. So I'm just going to continue to say, keep shorting Sarah Palin. And then I also think what I like about this market longer term is that there's definitely room for some degen plays too. So my general view is that Nick Begich is the favorite. But basically what's going on in this race is that after Saturday's election, the top four people advance into the general election. And the markets appear to be of the view that basically the top three are more or less settled, that it's going to be Palin, Begich, and then the independent Alec Rose. But the fourth, the markets seem to think that it's going to be Tara Sweeney, who is also a Republican. I guess that what I'm confused by, and then there's also kind of a subset of traders who think that Santa Claus is going to be number 4. The markets are giving him like a 25%.
By the way, his name is actually Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean, it's some Bernie bro with like a massive white beard.
Yeah,
who literally looks like Santa. The markets are saying that he is has a 26% chance of finishing in the top 4. The thing that I am wondering, and I'm hoping that someone listening can like weigh in on this, is if you have a totally fractured field and Santa turns out to be a meme, like not a serious guy, what I'm wondering is, would there not be an argument to that basically a Democrat fills out the 4th spot, just because like the minority of voters in Alaska, a sizable minority who are Democrats, would kind of get behind one candidate. The Republicans would all be fractured. Santa would be a meme, and they get in there. So, and if that's the case, I mean, maybe that's an argument for buying 1% lottos on Mary Peltola, who is in the Alaska legislature and seems to be spending a fair amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, I even pulled the sample ballot for the primary, or whatever you call this. I don't know what the special primary election. That's what it's called. Santa Claus, first of all, it's incredibly crowded. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen 40 names on one ballot. So when a ballot gets that crowded, I actually think a name like Santa Claus sort of recedes. And it also recedes because it's Claus, Santa. that has a very different ring to it than here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, da 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 da. You know, it's Claus, comma Santa. It doesn't jump out on the ballot. You know, if I'm unserious and I'm a meme voter, it makes it very hard for me to find the meme. So I'm actually very bearish on Santa Claus making it out of this round too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shorting him in the predicted thing. I could end up getting blown out there, but I just, as a general rule, think, you know, when you have a bunch of guys addicted to the internet, you know, betting on memes, that in the long term, shorting that probably is the right strategy. So yeah, I guess what I'm going to say, and by the way, do you have a view on Al Gross, like whether or not Lottos are worth it there?
Bro, what makes you think I know who the fuck Al Gross is?
All right, well, I mean, I'll offer a kind of a tentative view. I am staying out of that one because I think the argument for betting on him is basically that you have a bunch of fractured Republicans and this independent guy comes through. I'm staying out of Gross only because I'm kind of betting on the assumption that Sarah Palin is just going to kind of crater in the coming months.
Glad you're
but I think
staying out of Gross. It's good. So I'm glad you're staying out of Gross.
Yeah, but I am going to watch that for Lottos, and you know, there might be an argument to get in there later if the Republicans end up being fractured.
So I was actually going to kill this race because it's just, I don't have the patience, and it's so fractured. And it's like, you know how as a trader, you just sort of get to know what you're good at and what you're bad at. These type of races start to give me like the alarm, heebie-jeebies when they're so split up. So I don't know. They're easier for you. They're harder for me.
In that vein, I'm also going to say, I know people don't like to bet on high prices necessarily, but I'm going to say just buy nose on Tara Sweeney. You can get nose on her at 91, 92%. I just don't see a scenario in which she is the Republican that manages to beat out both Begich and Palin. And if for whatever reason she doesn't get the fourth slot, you could just that could just go to zero right after Saturday evening. So that's, in my view, a relatively safe way to bet on this one.
I'm totally with you on that. I like that. I don't know anything about Tara Sweeney, but the fact that she's going up against kind of two dynastic politicians, you know, plus insert outsider, that does not spell success to me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the last thing we have to deal with is, I guess I am going to call ma épouse. I'm going to marry the San Jose mayor race, and you've gotten deeper into this than I have, but we sort of teased it a little up front. I just think these types of matchups, the trend is pointing in one direction. I'll say it that way, and this is a very cheap way to bet on the trend.
I mean, yeah, so right now, look, the market prices are all over the place, but now Cindy Chavez is back up to 90%, Matt Mahan, 21%. I'm just basically going to figure out ways to short Chavez, and you have until November to sort of see where that one goes. I just, you know, worst case, she maintains kind of a steady lead and you get out without too much of a loss. But I think this is a pretty obvious place where you buy the underdog.
Absolutely. It is a great season to buy underdogs in Dem primaries. Well, that's it. I mean, that's the show, bro. Did I forget anything?
Yeah, sounds good.
Wow, you really just helped me land that like a fucking frying pan. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll be back soon, boys. For Star Spangled Gamblers, I'm Keen Dog. Pratik, thank you as always.